Hi, friends. Welcome to the solo episode of the Full Heart Podcast. Today, we're going to talk about self-sabotage and self-love. What is self-sabotage? What comes to mind when you think of that? Do you feel it in your body? Do you acknowledge that you do that? And do you think that self-sabotage could actually be self-love? Like, are they kind of doing the same thing? How do they work together? How do they fight? These are all things I've been pondering for myself because I noticed that I have been sabotaging myself inside of this podcast endeavor in a lot of ways. And that just tells me that this just seems like more evidence that this is where I'm meant to go. And so I'm leaning in and I'm embracing it. And I'm doing my best, but I get scared, y'all. I get scared. And so I was talking to my friend Terry, who's actually going to be the next episode after this one. And she helps people with subconscious blocks and to move through the subconscious blocks. And so in talking to her, it just reminded me of a lot of the things that I'm doing to myself. And she has this freebie called the Big Fat List, where she has listed 29 subconscious blocks that she's noticed from clients over the years. And so I thought, I'm going to go take another look at this and just see what comes up. And I wrote down 15 different blocks that I related to from her list. 15 ways that I related to of how I was blocking myself from success inside of this podcast. And that's when I just thought, okay, no wonder I feel so overwhelmed. Like there's so many thoughts and stories running through my system. No wonder. So I just thought it would be fun to share it with you guys because one, we all self-sabotage in some way. And so I know there's going to be a way to relate to this. Two, we don't get to success without self-sabotaging once or twice along the way. That's just what happens. Or maybe you need to really look at your definition of success and your upcoming goals. Like, is that really your goal, or are you kind of holding back a little bit? Like self-sabotage is just part of our human experience. Having these subconscious blocks is just part of our human experience. And so the last reason I'm sharing is because it helps me to release it. I'm taking ownership of it, and that helps me to release it and to move forward. Because I do know that my mission is to share love in this world, and especially with so much happening right now, it's too much sometimes. I just really believe that anybody who can show up in a higher vibration, in love, in honesty and truth, can start to change the world. And that's more of what we need right now. Okay, so what is self-sabotage? Well, essentially, I'm going to tell you what Terry says in her book, and now this is my interpretation of it. Like, I have the link for the book if you get curious about doing this for yourself, which I recommend everybody does. I'll have the link in the show notes. But basically, she's talking about we all have an inner dreamer and an inner critic. That inner dreamer has all the goals, the dreams, the big visions, and the inner critic is the one that is basically scared. And these two are in conflict all the time. Okay, these two different aspects of yourself, they're at war with each other on a subconscious level. So as long as they're pulling in opposite directions, you can't move forward because they're pulling against each other. It's a tug of war. So there's no movement happening, which makes sense, right? The dreamer wants one thing, the critic wants another thing. They kind of want both want the same thing, but they're just going about it in opposite weird ways. Okay. So again, she has 29 blocks. I related to 15, but what I'm just going to share a couple of them that really hit because I'm not going to share all 15. That would be a really long, intense podcast. And yeah, this isn't like a full-on therapy session. Okay. So the first one she lists, number 1, is called it's called being written on from the outside. This one is fascinating to me. I love that she did it number 1 because she says that every single client she's ever had has had this one. Like everybody has it. And it makes sense. So written on from the outside is basically your inner critic is attached to old messages about yourself and about the world. And your inner dreamer is at odds with that inner critic. And it's so written on from the outside. This is like the subconscious beliefs you picked up as a kid. Your mom said something one time and you latched onto that, or your teacher said something one time and so you made it believe. Okay, so for me specifically, one time when I was a kid, I wanted to be a part of the drill team. I saw this drill team and I thought it was amazing. I wanted to do it. And my mom said no. And I was like 5 or 6 at the time. And so all I remember is that my mom said no. And then I didn't ask to dance for the rest of my life, even though I desperately wanted to. I just shut up and never asked again. And one time when I was in second grade, I was tested for the Gifted Talented program, didn't make it by like 1 or 2 points, like 1 point something dumb. And so for the rest of my school, I just thought it was dumb. I had the belief that I was not smart. And so, like, those are just two examples of being written on from the outside, where you just kind of take on this story that somebody else told you. It's not necessarily what they were saying, but it's what you made it mean. And so you're letting that dictate what's happening. And so I really, I just relate to that one in almost everything that I do. And I know, like she said, everybody has it. And it also correlates to a few others where I feel like they all kind of share the same theme. Because we had another one where the pretzel, you kind of twist yourself into a pretzel to become palatable for everybody else. A fear of attack, you're afraid that if you do what your inner dreamer really wants, that you do what you really want, that you'll be attacked from the outside, that people will be mad at you somehow. Fear of hurting others, you won't share your actual truth, you won't write the book you want or sing the song you want or whatever because you're afraid that it's going to hurt somebody else. Fear of being found out as an imposter. Everybody I know has imposter syndrome on some level. And fear of unworthiness. These all kind of relate to me somehow because, especially that fear of unworthiness, that one's a huge one. That one's really, really loud in my head whenever I'm doing any of this. Like, who am I? I'm just nobody. Nobody cares what I have to say. Like, there's just so much unworthiness. And that just relates back to some of the stories of being written on from the outside, stories that I collected and attached to that, I'm not worthy of being labeled smart because I didn't make the GT program or whatever, and just, other stories. And so when I think about all these together, it's like I'm just really manipulating myself and shutting myself down so that others can feel okay. And I think that a lot of us do this in certain ways. And so the thing I appreciate about Terry is that she has a way of being really specific with it. Like I said, these are 5 different ones. To me, they all kind of mush together, but she has a way of being really specific on how it shows up in a little bit of a different way in each aspect. But the theme for me there was just really me shutting down and hiding myself and staying quiet and small so that others can stay comfortable. That's been a big theme for me in regular life. And so to show up in a way that feels kind of public, like having a podcast, wanting to write a book, having to share this on social media and everything. And it's about my life, it's about my beliefs, my stories, research that I want to do. Like, it's my thoughts that I'm putting out. That feels so vulnerable and so scary. And the conflict inside is like the inner dreamer wants to go out and share these things and to help to transmute to the frequency of love. The inner critic is so terrified that that somebody's going to be mad at me. Somebody's going to yell at me. Somebody's going to figure out I'm an idiot and prove me wrong somehow. And there's just so many stories, so many stories. And so another couple that related together to me is one, protecting your peace. It's really about not wanting to share because sharing causes dysregulation, which again is very similar to what we were talking about. If you share, you feel dysregulated because it's scary. It's scary to share your truth, but not sharing causes stress too because it's what you're meant to share. So then you're just kind of stuck. Again, they're fighting against each other. And this is how I felt for this project too, where I feel like, okay, it's time to step up and share more messages of love, but I'm terrified because of all these other stories, but I feel terrible not showing up and sharing. So then it's just this vicious cycle. It's just vicious cycle. And then the last one is fear of being too different from my family. That one really hits, and it's talking about how your inner child really wants to stay safe by having a strong bond with your family, because that's how we stay safe and thriving in the world. And since all of these are on a subconscious level, they likely have been imprinted before you were 7. So there's just something about not wanting to really to not wanting to be kicked out of the family unit. And I'm already so different than everybody in my family. Like, I feel so different from everybody. And a lot of these other fears, like fear that they're going to be mad or they're going to judge me or whatever, whenever I picture that, it's people in my family that I think are going to be my harshest critic. And that's really painful and scary. So, okay, Rebeka, that's nice. You have these blocks, you figured out what they are, but what do you do? Well, first, let me talk about how these show up specifically for me, in case it's helpful for you. I've talked a little bit about how it shuts me down. Like, I just didn't show up for the podcast. I wouldn't post on social media. I just completely shut down. I stopped talking. I stopped sharing. I just stay as quiet and as small as possible. Because if I stay quiet and small, I can't bother anybody and nobody can be mad at me. That's been my MO for as long as I can remember. Also, the anxiety is so overwhelming that I can barely move, let alone speak. So then again, another vicious cycle happens where I feel the conflict, I feel the inner conflict, and then it shuts me down. And then the anxiety is like the physical manifestation of that conflict because I feel terrified to share, but I feel terrified to not. And so I just stand there and not able to do or say anything. But the feeling in my body, like I feel like my heart's going to explode. I feel like my stomach is going to dissolve from flipping so many somersaults. And I just feel exhausted. Like everything feels like I just want to dissolve into the earth. I'd rather just die than have to make any steps forward, which sounds really dramatic. But let's be honest, that's what the inner critic does. The inner critic is quite dramatic, and anxiety is quite dramatic. And I know I'm not the only one who feels that. You might not feel specifically like I said, but you can relate. And that's why we stop ourselves, especially as women, because we've been taught so much to stay small and to stay quiet and to stay agreeable. You know, you should smile more. You should lose some weight. Make sure you're palatable. Like all the time, we're having to think about being palatable for the world, being attractive for the world. In so many ways, we've been taught our whole lives. And so that just kind of amplifies everything else. So whenever this starts happening, what do I do specifically? First, if you relate to this, like I would highly recommend you get a coach or a therapist or some kind of support. I don't do coaching anymore, but I know some amazing ones and I've interviewed some amazing ones. So I can recommend episodes of mine to check out so you can get to know different coaches. If you have a therapist, I mean, I would highly recommend that. But here's the thing. I have a variety of tools. I used to teach the Full Heart course, which was really helpful. I've thought about like re-releasing it on the podcast, like doing it again or on TikTok or something, but we'll see. So through these variety of tools, it basically comes down to acknowledging the feeling, feeling the feeling, and transmuting the feeling. Now, whenever Terry said that the inner dreamer and the inner critic are in conflict, that really resonated with me. And so that is the acknowledgement. When I realized I hadn't recorded a solo podcast episode in 2 weeks, I hadn't thought of one. I couldn't for the life of me think of anything to talk about. Anytime I thought about even trying, I would get so anxious that I would want to throw up. Like there were just so many things. So I just had to acknowledge, okay, this is what's happening. And the main key here is to observe, not judge. I hear some other people on the internet will say things like, oh, your brain is lying to you, or your brain is just mean, or whatever. And I don't believe that. I do not believe that the inner critic is the devil out to get you. I don't believe there's anything like that. I think this is just part of the process. And the first part of the process of being human is to acknowledge the feelings you're feeling. Because if you would just let them keep running on the subconscious level, they're just going to keep subconsciously running everything. But once you can see them, and you shine a light on them, they can't hide anymore. So observe, don't judge. Okay. And then feel the feeling. Really be honest. Like that's when I had to get really clear. How does this show up in my body? What does it actually feel like in my body? What stories am I telling myself? Like what is happening in my head? Who am I envisioning being mad at me? Why do I think that person's going to be mad at me? What am I really attaching myself to in this moment? And for me, it was just a lot of, oh, I'm already so different from my family. They're just gonna, hate this too. And I won't have any friends. I won't have any kind of support. Also, it's not like I have a PhD in anything. I just read a lot of things. So why would anybody trust my point of view? Why do I think I need to open my mouth? Everybody on's online talking their stuff. So what's the point of me talking? just really getting clear on those stories and where it's showing up in my body, how it feels in my heart, how it feels in my stomach, and letting the feeling run its course. Like, this is again where I feel like it's really beneficial to have a coach or a therapist to hold the space with you, because there have been times I've done this by myself and it turned out really bad. There have been a lot of times that I've done this by myself and it turned out really, really great. So just having somebody else to hold the space with you feels really important. Because the next and final one is to transmute it, to let this anxiety switch into love. Because when we think about emotions on a frequency level, if we believe that everything is energy, which we've been taught on a variety of ways, the spiritual people tell us this, the scientists tell us this, everything is energy. So the anxiety is moving at a certain frequency. And when you start to really acknowledge it and observe it and sit with it, it can't help but transmute. And if your ultimate goal is to transmute this into love, watch how that frequency changes and watch how the story you tell changes. And then that is the energy that you are emitting. Instead of the anxiety, you get to emit the love. How exactly do you transmute this? Well, again, there's a variety of tools. I like to use emotional freedom technique or tapping, and sometimes I'll write out. There's this technique that I learned a long time ago, and I kind of do the same thing with either tapping or writing it, just like whatever I feel like I need to do at the time, where I'll start with the truth as I see it in that moment. I'll start with my feelings, saying, I feel really overwhelmed. The great thing about tapping is that you start right in with the love. You say, even though I feel really overwhelmed, I deeply love myself. And then if I can't think of anything else, I'll just say that for a whole round. Even though I feel really overwhelmed, I deeply love myself. Even though I feel really anxious, I deeply love myself. Even though this anxiety is taking over my body, I deeply love myself. And I just really get honest about what's happening. I am feeling anxious and I love myself. And then the energy always shifts. And then I get to start talking about what is actually being created. Okay, and then in the writing aspect of it, I kind of start with the same thing where I get honest about what I'm feeling right now. Like, I feel so anxious because I'm so angry at myself for not doing X, Y, and Z, yada, yada. Like, I just let it all out. And then there's always this energy shift. And that's what's so fascinating to me. And I start writing, the truth is. And at first it'll say, like, the truth is, I'm an idiot. Nobody wants to listen to me. The truth is, I haven't read enough books. The truth is, nobody's even listening to me anyway. And then when that energy shift happens, it's so fascinating and it turns into something like, well, the truth is, I feel anxious because I'm not sharing. The truth is, even if two people are listening, I feel like I just have to say these things. Like, the truth is that I know I am coming from love and I'm not forcing my message on anybody. So this is going out to the people that can relate to it, the people that can expand on it. Like, the truth is, this isn't just about me. This is about the collective. And it starts to really shift the perspective. It's a really cool aspect. It's a really cool tool that has helped me a lot. It's one of the things that it's similar to one of the things we did in the Full Heart course. Terry, I know, has a very specific tool called the Feel Better Letters. She has a way of doing this that is beautiful and amazing. So she has a whole program if that's something that you're wanting to explore as well. Because here's the deal. When we think about all of this, we think about self-sabotage, we think about self-love. What is actually happening here? Again, I do not believe that self-sabotage is the devil coming to get you. I don't think it's your brain hating you. Like, I don't think it's anything bad, which might sound naive, but I just really think it's part of being human. One thing, okay, there's a manifestation person, Lacey Phillips. She has a podcast called To Be Magnetic, and she talks about manifestation. And one of the steps inside of her process of manifestation she shares is being tested. And the way that she shared it just really made something clear to me. And it relates to this for me because as I'm manifesting having a successful podcast, then I'm being tested through this self-sabotage, right? So a lot of people go straight to, oh, that's the devil trying to keep you down because you're on a good path or whatever it is. And I see it as when you have a guitar string and you're tuning your guitar. There's the little dials on the end. And so you have to either tighten the string or loosen it. You have to find the exact right tension for that string to be in tune. It's the same thing with the piano. There's 88 keys, there's 88 strings. Those strings have to be at the exact right tension to be in tune. And so whenever you're being tested, it's not that you're doing anything wrong. It's not that any evil is coming out to get you. It's simply that you're being fine-tuned. You are being tuned to the exact right frequency that you're meant to be on. And if you think about it, making a string more tense has got to be a little painful. If we were to personalize that string and ask it, be like, well, it's a little tight, but it sounds good. The process of it isn't really comfortable, but that's how we grow. That's how we move into the frequency we're meant to go into. And so that's how I see it. It's more of like a fine tuning. It's more of connection to it. And whenever I think about that tension that Terry talked about in here, again, that visualization just really helps me to understand what's happening whenever I'm feeling that anxiety. Then I could observe it a little better and to see what actually is the tension and to see those two playing the tug of war, like I said in the beginning, and kind of fighting against each other instead of making movement forward. And that makes me think of a couple scenarios. One is quicksand, which, by the way, if anybody grew up in the 80s, I saw this meme recently that's like, man, my childhood movies like really had me thinking quicksand was an issue, and it's not. And I didn't think about how many movies in the 80s had quicksand. Like, that's so weird. But it's true. And I remember being so scared. And I remember learning that if you ever get in quicksand, you just got to stand really still, because the more that you fight it, the faster it'll gobble you up. And I remember learning that fact and just like preparing myself. If I meet quicksand, I'm going to sit still. But it also makes me think of another visual that might help is, I don't know if you ever did those finger traps. It's like a tube you put your both fingers in. And then if you pull it out, then it gets tighter. You can't get your fingers out. You think like, oh, I just got to pull my fingers out to do it. But that makes you more trapped and more frustrated. When in reality, you got to push them together, like relax them, and then do like one at a time and you're fine. And so that tension really helps me with that. Like, oh, okay, let's just relax into it. And so that's the feelings, right? Like first we acknowledge we're in quicksand. So let's relax into it. Our fingers are in the trap. Let's relax into it. And then that's how you can transmute it. That's how you can transmute the feelings, but you can't transmute the feelings if you don't first acknowledge and feel the feelings. The last visual that I think is really good, that may or may not be relatable, but if you're flying an airplane and the airplane starts to spiral out of control, this also relates to if you're driving on like a icy road, then and the car starts to go out of control, you take your hands off the wheel. You take everything off. Like for a pilot, you take your hands off the yoke. You just let it even itself out. If you try to fight against that spiral, you're going to crash. But if you let it go, the plane will find equilibrium. If you let it go, the car will just slide through. But if you try to press on the brakes or control it, it's going to make a bigger mess. And that's the same thing. You have this tension inside of you. So if you just keep feeding the tension, if you try to control the tension, if you try to say, oh, my brain's just being a dick, I'm just going to ignore it, that's not, like, that's just feeding the tension. If you say, oh, this is the devil fighting against me, and I'm a warrior of God, like I'm going to fight against the devil, that's just playing into the tension. It's not helpful. That's how I've always seen it. And that really helped to transmute the energy for me. So hopefully that helps to transmute the energy for you as well. I'd be curious to hear if this relates to you or not. But really, this is just how we grow and develop. Everything in life is constantly growing and expanding, and that requires some kind of tension. That requires some kind of push and pull all the time. If you start really paying attention to life, to nature, everything, it's in everything. Okay, so you can either continue to fight against it or you can embrace. And so that's what I'm doing here. I'm embracing it. I'm honoring it. I'm acknowledging it. And I'm saying, hey, like, look, this is what happens. I do have a mission I would really like to accomplish with this podcast. And it's not going to happen if I stay quiet and small and scared. But if I can expand and if I can transmute and expand, then who knows what I can create, Who knows what else is trying to come through me. This is also just really All of it comes back to love. The self-critic, believe it or not, is loving you. It wants you to be safe. It's like the helicopter parent, right? That isn't really helping you, but they really believe that they're loving you. So the self-critic is loving you. The inner dreamer is loving you because the inner dreamer knows this is where we're meant to go. This is where you're meant to shine, right? They're just loving you in opposite ways, which is why, again, there's that tension. And so when I asked at the beginning, have you ever wondered, like, what is self-sabotage? Why do you self-sabotage? And can it actually be self-love? I mean, in a way it is. Your inner critic is loving you as hard as it can. And it thinks that by keeping you contained and small and quiet and anxious, that is the most loving thing it can do. Which of course is silly, but that's also why the sabotage will transmute into love, because essentially it is misdirected love. So, embracing this whole journey and going with the theme of success in this first season of the Full Heart podcast, on your way to success, you will experience some self-sabotage. You will experience some fear, anxiety, sometimes that you just don't go after your dream because it feels like too much for whatever reason. And that's okay. That's part of the process. That doesn't mean you give up. That doesn't mean it's done. That just means that you have reached a point that is here to fine tune you, that is here to grow you and to expand you in love. And that is a beautiful thing. It really is. So thank you for sharing this time and space with me. And I'll see you soon. Love you. Bye.